I guess the title of this video, well, it's become a bit of a trope. Seems every time we're told we must do something we don't like, we're told we have to do it for the children. Every evil, every invasion of a new idea seems couched with this idea that they're coming for our children. Well, however, two recent articles show that there are people who want to control your children. And we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and we teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me today. As always, please head to the website constitutionstudy.com where you can find the text for this article. It's where you can find all the material that I put out. You can get my newsletter. You can actually have these videos emailed directly to your inbox as soon as they're released. All that's available on the website constitutionstudy.com. If you can find it worthwhile and you want to support the work that I'm doing, you can do that there as well. It does help defray the cost of the work that I'm doing here. And hopefully you'll find value in the material that I'm producing for you. So with that, let's talk about homeschooling. Now, the first article I found is titled "The Risks of Homeschooling" from a Harvard magazine. Now, in this article, Elizabeth Bartholet, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, she's a public interest law professor and director of the law school's child advocacy program. Well, she makes several dire claims in this article. She says homeschooled children are denied their right to a, quote, meaningful education, to be protected from child abuse, and from contributing to a democratic society. Full disclosure, I was a homeschooling father. My wife and myself homeschooled our daughter through all 12 years of primary and secondary education. Now, I could spend a lot of time debunking Ms. Bartholet's claims, but that's not the focus of this video, because it's the solution that she recommends, which is a presumptive ban on homeschooling. Several years ago, I was working on a project with an international team. And as often happens when spending extended periods of time working with a small team, well, talk turns towards family. Now, when a member of the team asked what grade of school my daughter was in, I had to explain to her that she was working in 2 different grades because we homeschool. Now, the look on her face was easily explained by the fact that she was from Germany. You see, in Germany, homeschooling is illegal. So the very thought of teaching your own children, well, it was as foreign to her as her native language was to me. And when I say that homeschooling is illegal in Germany, I don't mean it's discouraged or not supported. No, the practice is banned. In fact, in 2010, a German couple was granted political asylum in the United States due to the persecution they suffered in their home country, including thousands of euros in fines and police arriving at their home to take their children to the government school. Now, while Ms. Bartholet lists several reasons why homeschooling is dangerous to the children, well, most are ridiculous yarns without any real evidence or support. It is quite clear from the article that the reason, first and foremost, in Ms. Bartholet's mind, why homeschooling should be banned is that the children may not be taught what she thinks they should be taught. Now, while she does not detail what is included in the call to ensure children get a meaningful education, the fact that she believes the government has the right to determine what your children should and should not be taught, well, it's quite clear. Quote, "From the beginning of compulsory education in this country, we have thought of the government as having some right to educate children so that they become active, productive participants in the larger society. While I have not researched the constitutions of all 50 states, I believe most, if not all, establish a system of free public schools, not compulsory public schools. I know of no state constitution that makes attendance of a government-run school compulsory. They make education compulsory, yes, but they leave the decision as to where a child is educated to the parents. Why? Because I know of no constitution that gives control over the raising of a child to the government except in the extreme situations where the life or health of the child is at risk. What Ms. Bartholet believes turns the very idea of parental rights on its head. According to her, they're not your children. They belong to the government, in trust for society. Therefore, the government will determine what they will be taught and how they will be treated. and what the parents will be allowed to do with them. The second article that caught my attention lately involved an opinion out of the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The case of Gary, Jesse, Christopher, Isaiah, Esmeralda, Paul, and Jamie, all minors, versus Gretchen Whitmer. Several Detroit students sued several Michigan state officials because they claimed they were denied the right they claimed to a basic minimum education. I've discussed the question of education being a right before on these videos, but what I want to look at here is the theory behind this case. I'm sure most, if not all, Americans agree that a good education is important. In fact, one of the assumptions in this case, like the one made by Ms. Bartholet, is that the government has the authority to determine educational standards, not the parents. And that if the government-run schools are not meeting those standards, the best corrective is to sue those who run the schools rather than to recognize the parents' inherent right to find the best solution for their child. My wife loves to watch home buying programs. One thing I've noticed is how often buying and moving decisions are made not based on the best house for the money, but on what zip code the house is in. Why? Because while making school attendance compulsory, the state mandates that children can only go to the public schools that service their address. In effect, the quality of your child's public school education is based primarily on your zip code. If you want your child to get a better education than the one offered in your local government-run school, you have to pay twice. Once for the taxes for your local school, and then again for whatever school where you actually send your children. Now, if you can afford to live in an affluent neighborhood or send your children to a private school, well, then your child's options are greater. However, if you live in a lower income neighborhood and cannot afford private school, your child is doomed by the state to a subpar education and all the attendant difficulties that brings. Even living in an affluent neighborhood does not mean your child will get the education you believe they'll need to help them succeed in life. According to the National Center for Educational Statistics, which is part of the U.S. Department of Education, 90% of all students attend public school. Yet, according to the NCES's Program of International Student Assessment, United States students ranked 13th in reading literacy, 18th in science literacy, and a whopping 37th in mathematics literacy compared to the other 80 countries in the report. This is the same education system, according to studies from the First Amendment Center, that turn out students that on average between 30 and 40% cannot name a single freedom protected by the First Amendment. And only 1/10 of 1% can name all 5 freedoms. See, unfortunately, we've all had the experience of a young person who doesn't know how to make change unless the cash register tells them what it is. Or seen the on-the-street interviews of people, including college students and graduates, who can't tell you who we fought in the Revolutionary War or World War II. They've been taught to hate America, knowing everything that is wrong that we've ever done, but knowing nothing of the good we've done. They've also been taught that socialism is paradise, yet they do not know about the hundreds of millions who have been killed by it. Personal experience has shown me that most high school graduates do not know how to balance a checkbook, understand compound interest, or even understand their role in governing the nation. And this is the education system that these so-called experts say should determine what and how your children should learn. These are the people who believe you are unqualified to direct your child's upbringing. Let's face it, too many parents in America today, they've simply handed their children over to the government and expect them to be educated for them. Most blindly turn over the thing they say they love more than anything in the world, then turn their backs expecting the government to raise their children for them. Recent events have shown that many parents view the public school system more as daycare than education. Should our children be educated? Absolutely. Should the government have a monopoly on the education system? Absolutely not. See, what started out as an altruistic endeavor to make sure every child had the chance of a basic education has become a trap. Not only are our children not being taught the basics of reading, writing, and mathematics, but many are being indoctrinated to hate their own ancestors through a warped and twisted version of history. They are not taught the basic skills of civics that are needed to live in a free republic. They are instead taught to bow the knee to an all-powerful government. See, rather than citizens, our public schools have brought up generations of serfs more than willing to do the will of their masters in government. If we as a society want to offer a free public education system, it should be a voluntary option, something their parents choose. If the public schools cannot compete for students in dollars, if they need the bullies of government to force attendance, then they are failures as an education system and should reform themselves or close. Forcing students to go to a specific school because of where they live denies thousands, if not millions, of American children the basic education their parents expect. Punishing parents for finding a better alternative, well, that's the very definition of tyranny. Arbitrary or despotic exercise of power, the exercise of power over subjects and others with a rigor not authorized by law or justice, or not requisite for the purpose of government. Hence, tyranny is often synonymous with cruelty and oppression. So, what do you think? Do you think the government does a good job at education? Some places do better than others, that's true. And your local school district may be doing fine. But I bet you if you looked, you'd find that they are not teaching your children the civics they need to be citizens in a free republic. In fact, I bet you if you could actually see the textbooks they're using, you'd be shocked. But the question is, are our children ours or the government's? Who is in charge? Who decides what is best for them? Is it Big Brother or is it Mom and Dad? Again, I'm not talking about the extreme cases. In a situation where the child is in danger, their life, their health, they're in danger, yes, then government needs to intercede. But we're talking about the education of millions of American children. And as if the public school dominance isn't good enough, we have people that want it to be a monopoly. They want the next generation to learn only what the government wants them to learn. And that should scare every freedom-loving American. You know, there's a joke that says, be kind to your kids, they choose your nursing home. Well, I think we should educate our kids in civics because they will choose the leaders of the nation when we're old. It's time we stop trusting the government to do whatever they want. It's time we start holding them accountable, and that includes at the public school. It's time we take charge of our child's education, and we dispose of this tyranny and oppression, the cruelty of dooming children to a substandard education because of where they live or because you can't afford to pay twice for their education. So what do you think? Leave a comment, let me know. Hopefully you found this worthwhile, at least enough to come back and see me the next time on the Constitution Study.